What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MI Gardener channel. I got a jam-packed one for you today because in this episode we're going to be talking about 20 plants that you can still plant in August. That's right, 20 plants. So for all of you that think that your gardens are either just ramping up into production, or maybe you have your gardens getting a little bit battered by heat, and summer's beginning to wind down for you, and you're not really sure what that next transitional phase is, regardless if you are just getting into your main growing season or just leaving your main growing season, August is a time when I want you guys to focus on fall. You guys all ask me, Luke, what can I plant for fall, or should I be planting for fall? Now is the time you want to plant for fall. Mid-August is the prime time to get most of your crops in because we're beginning a cooling trend. This means that the plants that I'm going to outline in this video, as we just rifle through them, because there's 20 of them, are going to be slow to mature. They're going to be a little bit longer to mature than they normally would in the spring. But these are crops that are still going to have enough time to come to fruition. They're still going to produce food for your family, and they're going to cover those bare spots and get your garden looking great again, even when a lot of your crops are starting to kind of dwindle down. A lot of our tomatoes are just coming into full production. We're not worried about them kind of fading out yet. But when it comes to like our potatoes and our onions and our garlic and stuff like that, we've pulled a lot of those out. The onions and the potatoes, they're coming out really soon too. So we need that next transitional phase. And as gardeners, I cannot encourage you guys enough to always look and plan a couple weeks in advance, get your stuff ready to go. And hopefully this video is gonna help you out, because you should never have a bare bed. You should always be growing something. That way you are growing food for your family and your soil is being covered with beautiful plants. The first crop that you can grow in August are beets. Beets are a fantastic crop that I would encourage you guys to grow and succession plant. Succession planting is the best way to get a prolonged harvest so you're not overwhelmed with everything all at once. About 3 weeks ago, we planted our first succession of beets for our fall harvest. These are going to be the first to ripen and be ready to pull in about 4 or 5 more weeks. These are the Detroit Dark Red beets. I love the Detroit Dark Red because they can handle the heat, but they can also handle the cold. This is something that going into fall, as I feel a nice cool breeze blow by me, it's about 72 degrees. It's just an absolutely amazing day. But our nights get into the mid to low 50s right now. And that is a great temperature to grow a lot of your cool weather crops, but also that the daytime temperatures do definitely get into the 80s still. So these crops are going to tolerate those high temperatures. They're not going to go to seed on you, and they're still going to love those cool night temperatures as well. We're here with our second crop that we like to plant in August, which are beans. Beans will germinate better in the warm soil of August, and they'll grow better in the cooler temperatures of late August and September. Beans are something that matures super quick in about 50 to 60 days, whether it's a bush bean or a pole bean, and that makes it an incredible crop to grow for a fall harvest. So don't just think that beans are something you need to grow in the spring, because if you've ever tried fall beans, they actually do way better. So there's crop number 2. All right, crops 3, 4, 5, and 6 are cabbage, kale, Swiss chard, and broccoli. These are 4 crops that I cannot stress enough are perfect crops to grow in August. These are crops that you can get started now, and rather than maturing into hot weather, they're actually going to be maturing into cool weather. Now these cold weather crops do great because they can handle really cold weather of mid to late October, which is when we typically start getting our first frosts, and they can tolerate those temperatures. But rather than going into warm weather and getting shocked and prematurely bolting, like in the case of broccoli, a lot of times people get tiny little broccoli heads. You're gonna get much larger broccoli heads because they're maturing much more slowly. Same thing with cabbage. You're gonna get about 25 to 30% larger heads by growing them in fall, because rather than the cabbage forming a head prematurely, it's gonna have a lot of time to build up lots of foliage, and the more foliage you have, the bigger the heads are gonna be. Same thing with kale. It's actually gonna taste better because kale gets sweeter as the temperatures get cooler. Swiss chard, same exact thing. The leaves just get more tender and sweeter as you get later into the year. So one of the things that I always stress is planting these 4 crops for sure in August, because that way they're up and growing, and they're growing into some nice cool weather. All right, crops 7 and 8 are zucchini and cucumbers. I absolutely love these 2 crops because they're fast to mature, and they're ones that most people would never try to grow in a fall garden. However, I'll give you some reasons why I love to grow them in August. This is because if you look at our crops behind us, we have both cucumbers and zucchinis in this bed. We have cucumbers running along the trellis, and we have zucchinis over here. These are both crops that mature in about 60 to 65 days. They grow extremely quickly, but they don't like super high hot temperatures like most people think they do. These are summer crops, yes. However, they're not hot summer crops. These are more of like an early summer crop, believe it or not. Zucchini, when it's exposed to anything higher than 85 degrees, shuts down production. You don't get much fruit production. It also gets stressed and gets powdery mildew from the high heat and high humidity. And also it gets high pest pressure from things like squash vine borers and squash bugs. So if you can grow them, if you can start your seeds in early August, get them growing and maturing as the weather gets cooler, rather than them being exposed to high 80s, low 90s temperatures, you're growing them in a much more ideal temperature of mid to, kind of low to mid 70s, which is much more conducive for fruit production. There's a lot less pests, and there's also much less stress from heat and humidity, because when the cool temperatures come, the humidity leaves as well. So try growing these. I would highly recommend it. And stick to a zucchini, which is a summer squash, and stick to a pickling cucumber, which is a much faster maturing cucumber than some of your larger, more longer maturing cucumbers. The ninth crop that we can grow in August are bunching onions. These are a great crop to grow because they don't need the long growing season like bulbing onions do. They're cold hardy, so they can grow into your first frost or even your first freeze and do just fine. And also, they're much quicker to mature. But bulbing onions typically take about 100 to 110 days to mature, whereas bunching onions, you can start harvesting them at 50 to 60 days. It's a great crop to grow and something that's gonna grow well into fall and even early winter, believe it or not. So bunching onions, number 9. All right, now we're in this part of the garden where we planted our 10th, 11th, and 12th crops that we love to plant in August, and that is carrots, rutabaga, and turnips. We love to plant carrots, rutabaga, and turnips because these are 3 root vegetables that don't take a very long time to mature. They can handle the warm summer temperatures like your broccoli and your cabbage can, but they're also cool weather crops that do very well in colder temperatures of autumn. So these are crops that are going to take around 60 to 65 days to mature, but they're crops that are going to produce and actually taste better and get sweeter as the weather gets colder. And here we're actually going to plant our 13th favorite crop to grow in August, and that is peas. I absolutely love planting peas because they do not do well in hot temperatures, but much like beans, they sprout better in warm soil. So what we're going to do is we're going to plant these right now. We're going to get them up and growing, and as they grow, they're actually going to grow into a cooling trend, meaning they're going to have a lot more time to mature. They're going to do much better into fall, and we're actually going to get a much longer season. Here in Michigan, we love to plant peas for a fall harvest because in spring, they typically get really bitter and hard, and the plants dry up and pretty much burn up in the heat in early to mid-June. So we really don't get that long of a growing season. Whereas with fall, if we plant them now in early August, we'll pretty much get a harvest from basically September all the way through October. So we'll get essentially 2 months of a harvest rather than a couple weeks. So peas are a great one to grow in August. The 14th crop that we love to grow are radishes. Now radishes are considered a cool to cold weather crop, so we can't plant them right now, it's still too warm. Radishes don't like anything in the 70s at all, so what we need to do is plant them in late August. We'll plant them around August 20th to August 25th. That way they're in the ground, ready to germinate, and come like the 1st or 2nd of September, they're gonna be up and growing. They mature in about 30 to 40 days, which is great. They're a super fast to mature crop, and they're also gonna be growing in September. You're gonna get them in the ground in August, but they're gonna start maturing in September when your nighttime temperatures are in the high 40s and your daytime temperatures are in the low to mid 50s, maybe 60s at most. No high temperatures over like 70 degrees, or they're gonna start going to seed. So it's a perfect crop to grow in late August. The 15th and 16th crop that we love to grow in August are spinach and lettuce. These are very similar to radishes in that they don't like the high temperatures, so we're not gonna plant them now. Now, if you do grow in containers, it's a wonderful crop to grow right now because you can actually move them out of the sun during the heat of the day and move them out once the heat of the day is over. So they're still getting sunlight, they're still growing, and they're gonna grow great for you in August. Now, for those of you like us that are growing in raised beds and pretty stationary the way we grow, we need to plant them either later in August or use something like shade cloth. We don't use a whole lot of shade cloth in our garden, so we typically plant our lettuce in like late August. They'll be up and growing, and these are a very long season grow. So these are gonna grow well through September into October, and we're gonna harvest cut and come again lettuce pretty much until October. Once we get into October, in early October, that's when we'll plant our fall and winter harvest of lettuce and spinach. These are crops that will cover with plastic and will actually grow well into December and January, believe it or not. So these are an awesome crop to grow for a quick turnaround fall crop that's just going to give you a lot of food in a very little time. The 17th crop that we love to grow is kohlrabi. This actually fits into the same category as your cabbages, kales, broccolis, and Swiss chard. These are crops that do take a little bit longer to mature, but they can handle those cooler temperatures of October. So even if they're longer to grow, they're still going to mature and have plenty of time to grow and mature for you. And they're an amazing crop to grow because they get sweeter. Kohlrabi just has an amazing crisp texture, and they do better in cool weather, and the bulbs will get larger, much like they do with cabbage and broccoli when you're growing them in cool weather rather than in spring growing into warm weather. So give kohlrabi a try. It's one that not a lot of people give a fair chance to in the fall, but if you can give them 60 to 65 days, they're going to do great. The 18th crop that we love to grow in August is dill. It's a fast maturing crop that matures in about 60 to 65 days, but it also grows in cooler weather, so it doesn't bolt as fast. When dill goes to seed, it produces a ton of these seed heads, which attract flies, which I don't like in the garden, and it also makes dill seed, which spreads like weeds and then comes up in all my beds in later years. So I love growing dill in August because it's growing cooler temperatures, meaning it produces more of the dill leaves. Dill leaves we'll use in anything from pasta salad to potato salad to fish to making pickles with. It's just a great all-around herb, and I really love to use it. So we'll grow it in August so we get more of those leaves and less of the flowers. The next crop that grows super well in August is purslane. We love purslane because it grows everywhere in our garden. It pretty much sprouts wild for us, but you can get seeds. They're readily available online, and they're a crop that produces so much growth. I love purslane because it produces in not only hot weather, but also cold weather. Not only that, but it produces omega-3 fatty acids. It is a delicious citrusy green. We'll throw it in smoothies as well as salads. We'll saute it up, add it to pastas. It is just a great green. The Chinese call it the memory herb because it helps with brain function, obviously, with omega-3 fatty acids, but it also helps heart and vascular health. So it's a great plant to grow. It's super versatile, and that's why it's number 19 on the crops that we love to grow in August. And in case you have a hard time identifying wild purslane or you don't have any growing, you can buy the seeds over at migardener.com. We have some available over there for purchase, only 99 cents a pack, so you can't beat it. And we made it. The 20th crop that you can grow in August is amaranth. I love amaranth so much because it's such a versatile crop. It produces grains, which are a gluten-free grain substitute, but it also produces leaves that we personally eat, just like spinach. When harvested young, you won't even know a difference. Throw them in salads or saute them up. They're rich in vitamin K, vitamin E, and vitamin B, as well as iron. It's a super nutrient-rich green, much more heat tolerant than spinach, so you can grow them now and then grow them well into October, just like you could with spinach. But also, you're gonna get a grain, if it does go to seed, you're gonna get a grain that you can store and use, which is rich in protein, which is rich in iron and fiber, great for your body, and it's gluten-free. So if you have gluten intolerance or if you have celiac, it's a wonderful option for you guys as well. So there you go. There's 20 crops that you can grow in August. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new. If you did, make sure to throw a like up there, share this video with your other gardening buddies, and we'll catch you all on the next episode. Grow bigger, go home, everyone. Bye.